Everyone's got a bit of selfishness in them, but some aren't selfish enough. If we all embrace the right kind of selfishness, things in society that don't serve us wouldn't stand a chance. So communists hate capitalists because they say capitalists are all about profits. But really, capitalists are about profits and losses. They pay attention to both. A bakery selling various baked goods tries out different recipes and puts out assorted pastries, muffins, and scones. Upon realizing that some goods constantly sell better than others, it is the responsibility of the bakery owner to analyze what combination of ingredients leads to profits and what combinations lead to losses. He may like the raisin scones very much, but the sales show that his customers simply don't enjoy them as much. Yes, it is his bakery, but if he is to make a profit to enable him to keep his bakery standing for months and even years to come, he must put his tastes and desires aside and produce what his customers want the most, the croissants and muffins and not the raisin scones. The same should be true in our political space. Politicians who bake policies and programs that do not benefit us should be seeing a loss of our votes. We are just like those customers who buy from the baker. We, however, should not be willing to vote without informing ourselves. We are supposed to make sure that we only vote based on evidence. We are fortunate to be living in a time when both capitalism and communism have been tried by other countries already. It is easy for us to choose what we want because we know pain and suffering. We know pleasure and enjoyment. We as voters need to truly research and read about the different experiences of other countries before we start supporting fools who are trying to sell us cakes and pies made of mud while claiming to be selling us real cakes. Other municipalities have voted ANC, others DA, and some have voted EFF. What has been the experience of those people? Let's research that. Let's focus on that. Whatever those people have experienced, let's learn from that. We should taste the various goodies that political parties have baked over the years, how they run municipalities, schools, infrastructure, safety, and so on. And based on that, we need to decide whether to keep supporting them or look for the next bakery. The bakery owner may not know who the people who buy from his bakery are, but their desires and what they value influences his decisions. He has an incentive to pay attention to his customers' needs and wants because failure to do so will result in him sustaining losses and ultimately closing his bakery. That is how it works in the capitalist system. I know that communists make it seem like, oh, these capitalists make it all about themselves. They do not care about customers or workers. They are just out here to exploit. But really, it's exactly what they call it, a free market economy. You are free to buy or not buy from that bakery. They are free to bake goodies that you value over goodies that you do not value. That will mean a profit for them instead of a loss. In a similar manner, politicians and their parties should be judged like this. They are all gearing towards the 2026 local elections. Now, don't act like you don't have the freedom and right to choose what you like over what you don't like. Let the political parties that deserve a loss experience a loss, and let those who deserve a profit experience a profit. When we go to a bakery, we are selfish enough to buy what we like and enjoy. We are selfish enough to not buy stale bread. We are selfish enough to spend our money on what will be to our benefit. Now, as we prepare for the 2026 local elections, we need to employ a necessary degree of selfishness, fellow South Africans. We as South Africans are the problem when it comes to voting. We choose things that are bad for us. Instead of entering the bakeries that have the best for us, we choose the bakeries that sell rotten and unhealthy foods. We choose pies made of mud. It is exactly what we do on multi-choice. It is exactly what we do on our social lives. We listen to rubbish music that is destructive. We watch destructive content and we vote just like that. Certain citizens and residents of East Berlin had the required selfishness that I hope we as South Africans adopt this year. After World War II, where Hitler's Nazi Germany was defeated, the four winners, namely the Soviet Union, aka Russia, France, the United Kingdom, and the USA, took ownership of Germany. They divided the country in half, naming the two halves East and West Germany. East Germany was occupied by the Socialist Soviet Union, while West Germany was occupied by the capitalist France, USA, and UK. In addition to the entire country being split in half, the capital city, Berlin, was also divided into East and West Berlin. The same idea that was employed in the division of the nation of Germany was employed in the division of the city of Berlin. This act became one of the best practical, real-life demonstrations of the differences of socialism and capitalism. Basically, the people of Germany were divided into two groups. West Germany was forced to eat from a real bakery, while East Germany was forced to eat from a bakery that sells bread, cakes, and pies made of mud. Capitalism versus communism. The eastern side was governed by socialist political and economic models, while the western side was governed by capitalist political and economic models.
Some people think that a few master planners can determine what the people want, instead of leaving it up to millions of consumers and entrepreneurs. These lines were created by this kind of thinking.
For the next 12 years, the West German economy grew at a fast pace. Shops were filled with a wide variety of goods, housing improved, and the standard of living increased.
But not in the East. Things weren't going well.
The capitalist political and economic model governing West Berlin resulted in a rise from the waste that was left after World War II. Development, technological advancements, employment, and competitive salaries became prevalent in West Berlin, which resulted in residents of East Berlin slowly immigrating from East to West Berlin in search of a better life and opportunities. This was because their side of residence, East Berlin, was not experiencing the necessary innovation, development, or advancements. Instead, they were focused on a planned economy true to the socialists and communists. These Germans were selfish enough to identify the policies and economics governing East Berlin and realize that they did not make sense and did not serve them as citizens, and they wanted to detach themselves from the nonsense of socialism and communism and pursue the benefits of capitalism found in West Berlin. When the Soviet Union leaders realized that the citizens of East Berlin were leaving for greener pastures in neighboring West Berlin, they had a choice to make changes like the baker example. Stop serving the customers what they do not want and start serving them what they do want. But that was too capitalist for the Soviet Union to do. They chose to keep holding on to their ideology, even when it clearly does not work, you see. So they resorted to a typical communist approach: threats, force, and violence. They started taking away the citizens' right to free movement and freedom of association. They built the famous Berlin Wall to enforce the restrictions. And when people still tried to pursue better lives in capitalist West Berlin, socialist East Berlin increased the threats, the force, and violence by placing barbed wire, appointing soldiers to man the wall, and made the wall more secure to ensure that they keep the citizens in their underdeveloped, controlled economy.
Extending for 43 kilometers through Berlin and a further 112 through East Germany, the initial barrier consisted of barbed wire and mesh fencing. Some Berliners escaped by jumping over the wire or leaping from windows, but as the wall expanded, this became more difficult. By 1965, 106 kilometers of 3.6-meter-high concrete barricades had been added, topped with a smooth pipe to prevent climbing. Over the coming years, the barrier was strengthened with spike strips, guard dogs, and even landmines, along with 302 watchtowers and 20 bunkers. A parallel fence in the rear set off a 100-meter area called the Death Strip. There, all buildings were demolished and the ground covered with sand to provide a clear line of sight for the hundreds of guards ordered to shoot anyone attempting to cross.
Unlike the capitalist baker who stops making and selling raisin scones and makes more muffins and croissants based on the demand from his customers, the communists simply force you to gobble down that raisin scone that you dislike so much. They make you eat the mud cakes. Communism is not about the customer, aka the citizens. It's about the baker, aka the leaders. The Soviet Union leaders did not change their ways to meet the needs of the citizens. They simply employed threats and punishments onto the citizens without looking at their own failings. It's their way or the highway. I mean, all the resources and efforts dedicated to force the citizens to stay in a state that was not serving them could have instead been used to improve East Berlin and consequently the living conditions of the residents of East Berlin, leading them to not even think or having a reason to leave East Berlin for West Berlin. From this example, one can conclude that the communists are not on a mission to improve lives. They are on a mission to impose laws, no matter how destructive those laws may be.
The East German government created a large state security agency called the Stasi. Dr. Hubertus Knob is a German historian.
So the Stasi was the main instrument of controlling the society in East Germany.
Man hat nun nicht das gesagt, was man dachte, sondern das, was man eben so sagen sollte.
Does any of this sound familiar? Right here in South Africa, the communist parties and their supporters have been known to try to impose their views on everyone by portraying those with opposing views as the enemy. And slowly but surely, this makes citizens who do not support the revolution seem evil, anti-black, and even racist. We are all supposed to sing from one hymn sheet, and anyone who dares to deviate is the enemy. We are supposed to support black no matter what, our people this and one of us that. Nonsense.
So your friends, your colleagues at work, they worked for the Stasi.
Ja, so unterschwellig war immer da. Wenn ich auffalle, dann kann es passieren, dass ich abgeholt werde.
In my case, for example, I was living in the West. I smuggled forbidden books to the East. My best friend, he was a priest in East Germany. And I did it together with him. It came out that he was the informer and he told everything to the Stasi.
When residents of East Berlin were not happy with their government, instead of the government fixing their mess, they brought in forces who would threaten citizens and garner forced loyalty. When the ANC saw that the citizens were not happy with their incompetence and corruption, instead of the ANC stopping their nonsense, they put up their own type of Berlin Wall in the form of threatening citizens that if you do not vote for us, you will not get your grants.
To 18 million people bathola ama-grant. It has ensured ukuthi nale 350 noma incane iba khona for 11 million people. It could mean ukuthi abantwana batholi NSFAS if you weaken this organization. Ngoba la amanye amaqembu asazi ukuthi bona whether they will have the determination that we have heard. We have done a great deal, for instance, in the provision of grants. I don't know of any other country on our continent that has committed itself so much to 18 million people who receive grants, young and old, as well as an additional 10 million, if you like, who get grants of 350. And today, all those people are assisted and supported by our government. And I've already dealt with issues of water and electricity.
Just like how the citizens of East Berlin stayed in East Berlin not because of their free choice, but because of threats, certain South Africans have stayed with the ANC and its babies not because of free choice, but because of threats. If you vote for that party, they will bring back apartheid. As if that's not enough, the rest of us who do not fall for these communist threats have subtle and overt remarks made about our decisions to not vote for the ANC and its babies. Apparently, we want apartheid to return. If you are black, then you are a self-hating anti-black. And if you're a black person, then you are a racist for not supporting the communist parties and their destructive agendas. None of these tactics are new, by the way. As a wise King Solomon said, there is nothing new under the sun. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done.
The US and its allies poured money into West Germany's reconstruction. The Soviet Union extracted resources from the East as war reparations, making its planned economy even less competitive. Life in East Germany passed under the watchful eye of the Stasi, the secret police whose wiretaps and informants monitored citizens for any hint of disloyalty. While there was free healthcare and education in the East, the West boasted higher salaries, more consumer goods, and greater personal freedom. By 1961, about 3.5 million people, nearly 20% of the East German population, had left, including many young professionals. To prevent further losses, East Germany decided to close the border, and that's where the Berlin Wall came in.
Eingesperrt eigentlich.
Many people tried to escape from the East. One famous defector was an East German border guard who threw down his rifle and jumped across the barbed wire to safety in the West. By the 1980s, the Berlin Wall was 100 miles long and surrounded West Berlin. It was topped with watchtowers and armed guards. It was a piece of West Germany located in the middle of East Germany. 262 people died while trying to escape over the wall to freedom in West Berlin, where they could then travel by plane or rail to the rest of West Germany. Half of those killed were 18 to 25 years old. They were shot, drowned, or blown up by mines.
The difference between capitalists and communists is that when communists see that they are failing or they're losing, instead of going back to the drawing board to make the necessary changes, they rush to threats to make fake and forced profits. Unlike a capitalist baker who will remove the raisin scone from the menu because the customers simply don't like it, a communist baker will force you to eat those raisin scones whether you like them or not, because under communism you accept whatever we want to give you. There is no such thing as freedom, much less free market. Instead of brands of bread, there is only one national bread. Instead of many brands of TVs and cars, there is a national TV and a national car. Everyone gets that or none at all.
But it also created a flood of consumer goods, which were less expensive than in the East, and shortages in the East were common. Christine and Manfred Schreiber grew up in East Germany and were married there in 1979.
Apfelsinen, hier, Apfelsinen. Die gab es nur Weihnachten und dann wie viele Kinder haben Sie? 1, 2, 3. Na, dann kriegen Sie maximal 6 Apfelsinen oder 3 Bananen.
Products that were difficult to produce or imported were hard to find. When shops got bananas or oranges, people had to wait in a long line, but a lot of them had to leave empty-handed.
Ja, also das Einkaufserlebnis in der DDR war so, dass man nicht immer alles bekommen hat, was man wollte.
Als DDR-Bürger musste man immer Geld dabei haben, damit man, wenn es was gibt,
Egal was.
Dass man das dann kaufen kann.
Auch wenn man es nur als Tauschobjekt braucht.
Some things were just hard to get. If you could buy something that people wanted, you could trade it for something that you needed.
So residents of East Berlin had to just accept the poor quality healthcare and products that they were given by their communist government, while West Berlin enjoyed a variety of competitive products, services, and salaries.
And although it was illegal to watch Western TV, most East Germans could tune it in at home.
Du hast ja die Werbung immer gesehen, die Westwerbung jeden Abend. Und die Nachrichten und die Politik und sowas hat man ja alles live verfolgt.
They watched Democracy in Action, commercials for refrigerators that were almost impossible to buy, and a lifestyle that they would never have.
These day-to-day problems motivated more and more young, educated and talented people to move to the West. Companies were also leaving, taking managers and skilled workers with them. The brain drain continued.
By 1961, more than 2.5 million people had left East Germany, including nearly 1 million workers.
It's really important to remember, almost everyone moved from the east to the west, and almost no one moved from the west to the east.
In West Berlin, no one forced the factory workers to work and produce the cars, televisions, and fridges. Not at all. They chose to go to work because they saw it as a fair trade of their time. They valued the financial compensation that they earned and were able to use it to buy various goods available in the West Berlin market. Meanwhile, their friends over the wall did not enjoy such freedoms and choices, and so many ran away from that oppressive lifestyle of East Berlin. The Germans who left communist East Berlin for capitalist West Berlin had the degree of selfishness that every South African needs to adopt. A selfishness of looking at what is working, leaving what is not working for what is working, for your benefit and the benefit of your children and grandchildren, guys. Currently, when it comes to politics, certain South Africans behave like they are on the eastern side of the Berlin Wall, where there is no innovation, development, and chances of prosperity. They act like they have no options to vote for better parties. But really, we have the option to skip the East for the West. There's no high wall with barbed wire except the one that exists in our minds. Be selfish. Choose your future. Choose the future of your children. Choose unity and harmony. Say no to rubbish politicians.
It could mean ukuthi abantwana batholi iNSFAS if you weaken this organization. Ngoba la amanye amaqembu asazi ukuthi bona whether they will have the determination that we have heard. We have done a great deal, for instance, in the provision of grants.
The ANC and its babies are using promises that are communist. What do I mean? Instead of promising that they will offer independence and self-sufficiency, they promise handouts and dependence on the government, giving the government more and more power to use against you if and when they see fit. Offering free, mediocre products and services is not something that started with the ANC. It is a key characteristic of communists. The Soviet Union did the same in East Berlin.
Prices on essentials were subsidized by heavily taxing things like vacuum cleaners and refrigerators as luxury items, making them unaffordable.
So they tell you that certain items are free, but at the end of the day, you are actually paying for the free things through the luxury item tax. Because there is no such thing as free things. Nothing for free, nothing for mahala. No matter how tempting communist promises may be, the evidence shows that the communists do not know what they are doing. They keep wanting to plan and control things that they have no understanding of, and who ends up suffering? The citizens.
So-called luxury items that East Germans could buy were not up to West German standards. Stereos, TVs, and cars were nowhere near the same quality as those that you could buy in the West. The Trabant is a perfect example. East Germany was famous for making the worst cars in the world.
The Trabant, or Trabi as it was called, had a two-cycle engine and used a mixture of oil and gas, just like an old lawnmower.
We may find them funny, but the blue smoke that came out of them was not funny at all, but caused a lot of environmental problems.
An even bigger problem was lignite coal. It's the dirtiest coal there is, but Germany has a lot of it. In 1988, East Germany's unfiltered smokestacks polluted the atmosphere with 10 times more particulate matter and 10 times more sulfur dioxide per square kilometer than West Germany.
It was very dusty, it was stinky, and it was dangerous to live there. But it was not allowed to speak about this problem. Nobody feels responsible. So if it goes out here, who cares? It's not my problem. It's owned by the...
I am asking you to please see that communism is not beneficial for citizens, especially long term. Let us all embrace the right kind of selfishness that causes us to not accept things in society that don't serve us. We need to wake up, South Africa. Be selfish enough to stop pledging allegiance to parties and politicians that do not care about your needs and wants. Identify that the ANC, EFF, and MK party are peas in a pod, variations of the same poison, and vote them out. That's it for today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Remember to visit citizenconcerned.co.za/join to support the work that we do. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Katlego. This is Citizen Concerned. And until next time, beware of the comrades.